Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Lil Dudes Insect Academy podcast. I am here in Washington, D.C. at the ESA conference this year, the Entomology conference here in Washington, D.C., and I'm sitting across the table from my new friend Izaak, and we're going to talk bugs for a little bit with you guys. So I'm super excited for this episode. This is going to be awesome. So welcome to the show, Izaak. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, hello, my name is Izaak. My pronouns are she, her. I'm from Purdue University, and this is my first ESA.
Nice. Yeah. So we're going to talk about what the work you do in here in a minute. But first of all, what are you doing here at ESA? Did you have any fun things to do, or are you just hanging out this week?
So I got to present my research in the undergrad competition.
Nice.
And that was neat.
Nice. Yeah. So we'll talk about that research in a minute. But first, let's talk about some of your past schooling. Where are you with that, and where did you go, and or where are you going? And yeah, what have you worked on so far?
So I started college at UC Davis, ran out of money. California's expensive when you're not from there.
Right.
So then I took some time off and then went back to Purdue University, where I am now, and
nice.
I'm finishing up my undergrad, and then the plan is to do a PhD from there.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's the end goal. Nice. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what you've been working on with your undergrad. How do you like Purdue, and what have you been working on recently?
I love Purdue. It's super cool. I like that the department is like small enough that everyone knows each other, but big enough that we like have resources to do cool things.
That's great.
I work on honeybees, specifically behavior and communication. I'm looking at drone honeybees, which are the male honeybees, which are super neglected. People don't think that they have any purpose outside of reproduction, so I'm interested in digging a little bit more into what all they do. So I've been looking at, they get kicked out of the hive by the workers, and I have been looking at which ones get kicked out and why, and how do workers make that decision. Yeah,
so the drone bees, a lot of people think that they just don't really do anything other than, make new hives, right? But talk a little bit more about, let's go in depth about what you've been learning about that. What are some of the experiments that you've been doing with that?
So my research this summer has been all that question of which ones get kicked out and why. So we made a bunch of low-quality drones by having them have an immune response, and then we put them in colonies and left them overnight, and then saw which ones get kicked out and which ones are allowed to stay. And then we looked at a couple different ways that workers could be like picking up, like how do they tell which ones we're treating?
Interesting. Yeah. So, what is the application to these experiments? Like, why does this research matter to us?
Well, part of it is just that it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Also, eusocial species, these species where most of the individuals don't actually participate in the reproduction, they're just there to build the colony and produce, take care of the brood and produce food and whatnot. But they're not considered to be like taking part in these reproductive decisions, and that this is like actually these non-reproductive workers are making these decisions. They're influencing who gets to reproduce and who doesn't. So there's just like another dimension to this reproductive decision making that people haven't really looked at. Yeah,
that's fascinating. Yeah, so I've been learning a lot about honeybees as well, but like the ways that the drones find the queens is so fascinating to me, because I recently learned about the drone, what are they called? The drone
congregation area.
That's exactly right. Yeah. That's what I was thinking of. And it's just so fascinating to me that we don't know much about that, and they gather in these huge numbers. It's just so bizarre to me. So have you been learning about that a little bit, or?
Yeah, the thing is that it's really hard to study that because we don't know exactly where those are going to be.
Yeah.
We don't have any idea where they are in the Midwest, where Purdue is. We just don't know where those happen. We just know the drones go off and then the queens come back ready to start a new colony.
Yeah.
And we haven't it would be very cool to attach little trackers to drones to see where they go.
Right.
But there are just a whole bunch of logistical problems with that.
Right.
That's a really exciting thing about science, is that there are all sorts of questions that we just don't have the technology yet to answer.
Yeah.
So since technology is always improving, there's always new questions that
Yeah.
it's like, all right, it's ready, it's ripe, it's time to answer this one.
Yeah, that is so interesting. Yeah, and the bee is like so
Itty bitty.
yeah, small and also sensitive to flight. Like people say that they aren't supposed to be able to fly, right? But so like they can't. You can't really mess with the external components of the bee. You can't put a tracker on them or anything yet, right? Yeah, so that's really exciting. Yeah, so I was wondering, like, where did you originally get into bugs? Like, what was entomology specifically? What drew you in originally?
Well, I think a lot of it is like kids like bugs in general.
Yeah.
Not always, but I think a higher proportion of kids like bugs than
Mhm.
adults like bugs, and then you're kind of taught to not do that.
Right.
But it was at UC Davis. I was just walking around the like opening school stuff, and there was a table for the Entomology Club, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to join Entomology Club?"
Yeah.
And it was kind of mind blowing. Like, there are enough people who like that there's a club.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I want to join. And it was kind of it just went from there.
Yeah.
They're really cool because they're like little aliens. Like, I really like Pokemon.
Yeah. Yep.
And they're just real life Pokemon.
Yeah, that's a common experience with a lot of us. Yeah. Yeah. So you originally went there thinking, not sure what you wanted to do yet, or
I wanted to do genetics and genomics.
okay, yeah, and then you realized that entomology is actually,
Yeah.
a possible thing. That's really awesome.
I want to do. You can absolutely combine those. Like, you
Yeah.
can study evolution through insects, as
Absolutely.
I'm sure you've realized just from being here and talking to people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really awesome. Yeah, so that's really great that you happened to go to a school that had that already. Man, that's really awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, within the world of science and entomology and kind of just life in general, who kind of inspires you, and like, who do you look up to? Like, who's your inspiration here?
Well, my mentor at Purdue, Brock Harper.
Yeah.
He's believed in me in like this very like specific way, not just like a broad like, I believe you can do great things. But,
Right.
like, I believe you can do this experiment.
Right. Yeah.
And that's been very cool. There are some really neat science communicators. Ed Young, he's written a book on microbes and a book on like sensory perception.
Okay.
And both of those have just been gorgeous scientific writing. Just
Right.
exploring the diversity of stuff that scientists do, kind of like this podcast.
Right.
So I don't know, just the fact that there's so much cool stuff going on.
The variety. Yeah, that's what I've been learning this week is like the range in which you can take this, like everything from forensic to medical to agricultural to pest control. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
The breadth at which entomology can be used and utilized in the industries. So
Yeah.
it's really awesome.
Well,
Yeah.
most animals are insects. So,
Yeah.
like, if you're studying anything with animals, like, insects are a good place to start.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and well, you say start, but like you would never end. Like you would never get bored.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, really amazing. Awesome. Yeah. So, what are some other like hobbies and activities that you enjoy in your spare time, like to get away from all of that?
So I like yarn. I like knitting and crochet.
Nice.
A lot. I've made a few bug-themed patterns.
That's cool.
Which you can find on Ravelry. My username is Sugary Snail, which I know social media is a later question.
Yeah.
But, I like making bug clothes.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. So, you're kind of creative in that aspect.
Yeah.
How about any other hobbies that we missed?
I have a dog, and I like rats a lot. I don't have any pet rats right now, but
Yeah, that's awesome.
I have in the past.
That's awesome. Yeah, so let's move on to like your future. What's your big plans? You mentioned, eventually a PhD maybe.
Yeah.
What are you thinking for continuing your education and your research moving forward? Like, what are your big plans for the future?
Well, we have a lot of really exciting questions about drones that we want to answer.
Yeah.
We want to look at how much they drift between colonies, because if a honeybee worker tries to go into a colony that is not her own colony, she's
Right.
usually kicked out. She's not allowed in.
Right.
But drones are usually allowed in. And that's weird. Like, why are they doing that? Because the drone isn't helping build the comb. He's not bringing in food. He's not taking care of the babies.
Right.
He's just eating. He's just taking those resources. So, like, why are the workers letting him do that? And also, when they drift, like, is that because they're dumb and they don't know that they're going into the wrong colony, or are they like picking a colony? We have lots of questions, and lots of ideas of how to answer those questions.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, how would you tell what they're thinking? Who knows if they think or not? But yeah, like, what would you be tracking there? Like pheromone or genetics, or like, what is measurable with that?
So mostly, I think I would look at what colony does the drone end up in. There are some ways that you can attach little things to them to track them.
Identify.
And then also
yeah.
you can mark them different colors and then
Right.
just see, like, okay, all the drones from colony A have a red mark.
Right.
And then a week later, which colonies have red marked drones in them. And I'd like to, like, change which colonies would be maybe desirable for the drones and see if they end up drifting into those ones.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, super cool stuff here. Yeah. So lastly, before we wrap this up, where can the viewers go? Where can we go to learn more about you and the work that you're doing and follow along for the rest of your career?
So you can go to http://stopdronebullying.com, where you can see a video of a drone being kicked out of a colony.
Okay.
And that also leads you to the Harper website, where you can learn about all my lab mates and what we're all doing.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for being on the show. This was super fun. So crazy to learn about drones. Yeah, super awesome and important research going on here. So I'm so excited to see what you do next. Thank you so much for being on the show. This was really fun.
Thank you for having me. I love talking about bees.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Lil Dudes Insect Academy podcast. If you enjoyed it, definitely consider dropping a follow on whatever platform you're listening on. And also, Lil Dudes Insect Academy is a nonprofit organization. So if you're passionate about science communication, entomology, outreach, and education, and you enjoy what we're doing and how we're solving that gap, then consider heading over to our website and donating there, or becoming a monthly donor via our Patreon, which is also linked in the show notes of this episode. Yeah, so share this episode with one of your friends, and tune in next week. I will see you all next week, and with that, keep on bugging.